Hey everyone, welcome to It's a Parent Podcast, a podcast where I talk to guests about how they became themselves and through their parents, how they were raised, and what they're doing about it in their lives now. And today's guest is Ritch Duncan. He's a comedian, writer, and social media professional. I met him through working in kids media and found out that he was a stand-up comic. And I was like, whoa, another kids media person, stand-up. I got to meet him. And so when I finally did meet him, Ritch was warm. He was very open-hearted and he had a smile on his face. And I was just like, oh, I like this guy. When I told him I was going to be a father, he immediately was like, you're going to do great. It's great. And I hope you enjoy it. And you will. When I started this podcast, I thought, oh, Ritch would be an interesting person to talk to, not only because he's a father himself with a teenager, but he seems to have a joyful heart still, and that's something that I'm curious to hear more about. And this is my conversation with Ritch Duncan.
Hi, Joon. I'm so
Hi,
glad to be
Ritch.
here.
Thanks for coming on to the show. I know
Of course.
I gushed about you. It's all true. Thanks for coming on. As soon as I said do my podcast, you were like, yes, I will, without even knowing what it's about. But yeah, this whole thing started as me having a new daughter. And when I told you, you were so excited.
Congratulations, by the way.
Thank you. She's 5 months old, not
Tell me
too
your
long
name.
ago.
Or do you not tell names on podcasts? I don't even know.
No, it's okay. Her name's Penelope.
Lovely. Beautiful name.
Yes. What's your daughter's name?
Annabelle.
Annabelle. Yes. Wait, I mentioned she was a teenager, but is she a teenager?
She is. She's 15 years old, going to be 16 in June.
Wow. We'll get into raising a teenager later, but
it's easy. We can knock it out in like a couple seconds. No problem. Yeah.
Just leave her alone. That's the main parenting tip, I think. But yeah, when I met you, like you told me that you've been a stand-up for a while, and I feel like parenthood happened.
Mhm.
You took a break and did
Yeah.
other things that didn't take you away from the child, and now you're back. Because when I saw you perform,
Mhm.
because I hadn't seen you before, not that I'm like someone that's all about town, but when I saw you, I was like, wait, this is experience that is not a newcomer. So I was like, okay, he has chops. This is not new. And then
Mhm.
when you told me like, oh, you've been doing it forever, but had to take a break because of parenting, I commended that because I've thought about that and it's tough. But how's it been coming back to the scene?
It's been challenging, but great. I actually just looked at the calendar. I don't know when this is going to actually air, but it's March 9th, and this is now the year anniversary of when I decided to do this sort of return to stand-up comedy, this kind of crazy stunt I tried to do, or I successfully did last year, where I did 90 stand-up sets in 90 days. And this was I'm now getting on my Time Hop. I don't know if you use that app where it shows you all your old social media posts, but all those pictures are coming up of that first weekend when I came back. I made the decision I wasn't telling anybody at that time, but I had internally made the decision to try to do 90 stand-up sets in 90 days, mainly because, I had, I never really stopped doing stand up on purpose, but I think I definitely slowed down when I became a parent. And basically the pandemic ended stand up for me in a way that I don't feel like I was really able to control. And when I came back and did the occasional spot, you never really get completely out of it. So the way it would work would be, I had this old joke that I would tell about it, where they would say, I'd meet my old comedy friends, and they'd say, so are you doing stand up anymore? Were you doing stand up around? And I'd always say, oh, I do stand up, whenever I'm asked. So no. And but it's one of those jokes that ended up being, kind of not funny because it was true. But I would get asked every now and then, sporadically. I'd get asked to do stand up, and the way I would always do it would be, I'd put something in the books. I'd get booked at, I don't know, Young Ethel's or something 4 months down the line, bar in Brooklyn that does a lot of comedy shows. I'm sure you've done it a ton of times. And I would get booked there, and then I would say, okay, I'm doing a spot, in May. So when I get 2 weeks beforehand, let me go out and hit the open mics again, knock some of the rust off, figure out what I'm going to do, and then kind of do the mini cycle of, write joke, think of it, work it out, kind of get it into a place where it can be a bit, and then have something that I can present at the show. And I found and also during the pandemic, I never did. I was not in it enough that I really pursued those Zoom shows or anything like that. So
Yep.
it really put a gap in my performance that was not in my control. That I mean, obviously we all had a lot going on during the pandemic, but it was, I when I got back into stand up afterwards, I was not prepared for how bad at it I was. And
Really?
and the only way that I really, well, I mean, I mean, I did stand up hard for 15 years, and so there's a lot of muscle memory and residual bits that were back in the back of my head. And I found when I got back, there were a lot of times where I would start a bit in my head and then I would realize, wait, I have no memory of what this punchline is anymore. you
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
or even sometimes it would be a joke. Like I had a joke that I wanted to go into that used to crush before the pandemic, and it was a joke about how I was losing my hair. That ship has sailed. Like there's
Yeah,
no like
for the listeners here, Rich is a bald man now, and that
yeah.
is
I had a joke where I talked about coming out to my family as bald, and basically saying to my mom and dad, oh well, now that I'm losing my hair, and then that they would react in the way that you're supposed to react, whenever someone comes out to you. She'd say, "Oh, sweetheart, we've known for years." And it was like a pretty good bit, but like, if you're not sort of balding, that joke is not going to work. So there were a lot of things that, I mean, I guess it was when I got back into stand up, I didn't really have a grounded sense of the person that I thought that I was, my self image of myself on stage was not caught up with what the audience saw
right.
on stage. I still
Yeah.
had a version of myself and my material and who I was that was 6, 7 years, younger, or the experiences that I had were not
Yeah, the
up to
jokes
date.
for me feel like a time capsule because it's definitely
Hmm.
talking to a point in your life that you're commenting on. And if you told it again now at your age or at my age or whatever, it doesn't ring as true. So it's been both hard and easy to throw those things out for me. Like I can't tell those 20-year-old something jokes again because it's like I'm not single. It's not true anymore. I mean, you could
Hmm.
reminisce and be like, when I was single. But before we get into all the stand up and stuff, like
Yeah,
for
yeah.
me, I'm a comedian and crave attention and want approval.
Hmm.
And I think I'm well adjusted. And you seem like from the outside, you seem well adjusted as well. But
That's the goal, my friend.
you
That's the goal.
obviously have a craving for attention as well. But healthy enough that you were able to step away and not ruin your personal relationships to some point. Like you don't have that, not as a criticism, but like like the Joan Rivers that'll do anything and everything to get ahead and be in Hollywood, right?
Hmm.
So I was just wondering, like, this is a podcast about parents and how they were raised. So, Rich, I was wondering, like, what your relationship was like with your parents. Are they still alive? One,
My
and
mom is still alive. My dad passed away about 10 years ago.
I saw a recent post about where he posted a clip of him on a local news channel, and I feel like anyone that publicly posts about their parents probably had a pretty good relationship with them in some ways. So I was just curious what it was like growing up with your folks.
Well,
And
I grew up in suburban Massachusetts. My dad was a teacher. My mom was a minister,
wow.
Unitarian Universalist minister. And everybody in my family, on my, on really both sides of my family, it was teachers and ministers
Mm,
and newspaper folks, journalists. So the stretch of going
okay.
into being a communicator in some form was not a
Mm,
huge leap, but there very much was a sense that if you did have something to say, it needed to be something that was worth saying. So like, and I absolutely knew, like, when I was a kid, I wanted to be a comedian from a very, very, very young age, and I also knew that like when I was in high school, all I wanted to do, I mean, I had a joke notebook and wanted to, wanted to run off to Boston and go do stand up as much as I could. But I also knew very profoundly that if I didn't go to college, I was going to be doing that on my own. Like it was almost unspoken that um if you were going to be a member of society or an actual adult, you needed to be educated. You needed
Mm.
to be well read. You needed to uh, have a knowledge of and a working. I mean, like it was just sort of like stuff like, of course, you need to know Shakespeare.
D-
You
d-
know what I
does
mean?
does that feel societal at the time, or of your family, of your parents,
Uh,
instilling that in you?
probably a little bit of both. But I mean, I think that there was, there was very much a sense that um, it was okay for me to do comedy, but in order to do it, I had to be, if I was on the, I mean, this is a very different time, but if I was on the Bill Cosby or the Garrison Keeler side of things, obviously before Cosby's troubles were well known, but I mean, the idea that one needed to be saying something that was, you know, that there were comedians and humorists that were worth emulating and that were out
Mm.
there. Um,
So you see
but
stand
yeah.
up. I mean, I was projecting, but you see stand up less as a attention grabbing. That's a side effect of being a stand up, but it's more of being an orator and communicator and getting something out there.
I think for me, the getting it out there part is just a necessary part of the overall creative wheel turning.
Hmm.
Like for me, the writing of a joke and then that click of, hey, this is an observation that I think maybe something that might make other people laugh. Bringing it to others is an important part of that wheel. Like like I have a million projects that I've started writing and I want to talk about, and we even chatted about a children's media thing that I wanted to do at one point, but it for some reason the creative wheel for me always sticks when I don't have a little bit of external validation of someone going, yes, I that thing that you think is funny or resonant or true also resonates with me, and it's almost essential.
Yeah.
While I don't know that I don't, I'm not going to say that I'm completely immune to the uh, look at me,
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm not going to say narcissism, but I mean, it's like, it's like, it's sort of like alcoholism. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not an
There's a
alcoholic.
spectrum. There's a spectrum.
Yeah,
You
right.
know,
Yes,
there are
exactly.
people
So,
that like being the center of attention, and people really that don't want to be the center of attention. And we're probably on the more leaning on the center of attention part of things.
I mean, I honestly feel like my upbringing. I mean, I was a middle child, older brother and a younger
Mm.
brother, and there was not overwhelming tension, but there was tension in my home and in my parents' marriage when we were growing up, and I very much became the comedian as peacemaker. Bringing the temperature down, the pressure gauge, the person who could pierce the tense atmosphere with the punchline in such a way
Mhm.
that would bring the pressure down and make people laugh. Um, so there was part of that. And when you talk about, being the center of attention, like it immediately sparked me to being like in, sort of like corporate brainstorm meeting kind of things where like I'm good in that situation where like someone like there'll be a pause and I know that there's certain people that just don't feel comfortable kind of saying, here's my idea. I'm going to put myself out there. And I would say the way my psychology works is I'll jump in there to fill that space, not necessarily as much for me, but more for them to be like, hey, I have no problem being the person who's getting the ball rolling.
Right.
Like I'll be that voice that will do that and will sort of take that hit so we can start talking about it. And I do feel like, more than, multiple decades of stand-up comedy have inured me to the
Yeah.
sense of you can be big and brash in the moment and fill some silence, and and as you do that, it, you buy yourself 8 seconds for your fast brain if you're
Yeah.
quick to say, okay, well, what's coming next, and that ability to keep those balls in the air, so I don't know if that answers your question or not.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I feel the same way when I'm in those kinds of brainstorms that it's like low stakes bombing. I know it's a job, but it's like we're all just brainstorming ideas. Nothing is off the table. So then let's bomb. Who cares? And
Hmm.
then that triggers something else for someone else to say. And that's the whole point. And,
Right.
not
No
feeling
bad
precious.
ideas. There's no
No,
bad ideas,
not feeling
which means
precious
these are
about
all
these.
bad ideas. These are all These were all terrible ideas.
So it sounds like the funny bone came out of necessity, out of the situation of maybe family tension, and in your nature, maybe just to like, I don't like this tension. I want to relieve it. So let's help it along. I was wondering, with your dad and mom, whoever you want to start with, if there's anything from your dad that you've taken on as a person, and now reflecting, whether your wife had told you or not, like, you do
Mhm.
this thing, and then you look back and it's like, oh my gosh, that's from my dad. I was wondering if there's something that comes to mind immediately that you took from your dad, a personality trait.
There are I mean, my dad was funny. We were funny in different ways. My dad would play the long game in comedy, which I wish like he would absolutely the kind of jokes that he would tell, he would just say something that wasn't true and he knew it was funny, but like to a child, like he would say it to a child, and then what I don't have is his ability to hold that gag and have it be funny forever. Like at his memorial service, my older brother told this amazing story about how we had these rough winters in New England, and so obviously Dad and the boys would always go shovel the driveway out, and you get big snow drifts, and so what we would do is we would leave the shovels outside because you build the snow drifts out, and then it would snow a little bit. You have to come out, so we wouldn't bring them inside. We'd just take the shovel and chuck it into the snow drift. And when you pull the shovel out, it would leave this little hole.
Hmm.
So there'd be two or three holes in the snow drift. And when the shovels weren't there, they'd been put away. My older brother told the story about going out with our father, and he saw the little holes in the snowdrift, and he goes to my dad. He's like, "Oh, what are those holes?" Right? And my dad just goes, "Snow snakes," and that was it.
So quick,
like,
so
like,
quick.
like there were snow snakes, but like the joke isn't that he said snow snakes. Because if I said that to my daughter, I'd immediately be like, "Ha ha ha ha!" Like that's a thing I thought of. Let's have a
Giving
laugh.
it
This is
away,
funny,
yeah.
right? No, my older brother was 45 before he was like, "Oh my god, of course those were shovel. Why did he never tell me that?" Like he would absolutely play the long game. So that's a difference, I suppose, than to what my father would have. Um, but yeah, he would. I mean, just very. He had very a very dry, funny sense of humor like that, where he would say, like, yeah, we were driving through. We have family. My wife's my mother's sister married a Frenchman, so we have family in France, and when we were kids, we all got over to France for one of their weddings. We're driving through this field, and one of us kind of casually says, there's a waving grain or something in a field, and we're like, oh, I wonder what's growing in that field. And my dad just goes, oats. And we're like, huh, oh, okay. And then he goes, I have no idea that was oats, right? Like if you just say it like that, people will all believe it. So that was like the one instance that he actually came clean, where we all believed it. So you know, um,
You're all like 25, and he's like, "God damn, they still don't get that I'm not being serious."
I mean, he had. I don't know whether it is a just devilish enjoyment of his own sense of humor that he could enjoy. I mean, like you talk about that wheel going around and needing that external validation. Maybe he just didn't need that in the way that I did.
Or he
You
was
know,
telling your mom of just like, "Guess what I told Rich and the
right?
boys."
That's it. Right. We never had that. Yeah, I was just never on the other side of who this was being shared with. That's a possibility.
Is there anything
Um,
from your father that, I don't know if you've done this kind of self-reflection, that you recognize in yourself that he did, and you're unhappy that you took it on? That you're like, "Dang, I wish I didn't even know I was doing it, but it's really my dad's." Like, me
I
watching
mean,
my
that
dad.
stuff does come out when you're parenting a young child for sure.
Yeah.
It's amazing how many things that your reflexive, uh, your psyche just assumes this is how children are raised because that was the only example that you had was, from a parent like that. Um, and, I mean, what's funny is I don't notice it as much as my wife does.
Same, same.
So like and a great example is I'll be in the kitchen in the morning, trying to get coffee going and breakfast going or whatever it is, and I'll walk out of the kitchen and apparently I've left every single cabinet door wide open. Like, I needed stuff out of the cabinets and I left them all wide open, and like she's like, your dad did exactly the same thing, and it is that's definitely some form of genetic absent-mindedness, and I'm terrible at that as well. If
Genetic
I
absent-minded. That's a great album title.
And I'm pushing it away from myself too, right? Hey, it's just genetic. Hey, no problem on my end. No, but I very much have that thing of, if I have a pencil and a notebook in my hand and then I need to get a cup of coffee, all I'm thinking about is the coffee. And so I go, all right, this hand is going to be the coffee hand. And I get the coffee, and the pen I just put down, that vanished
Yeah,
out of my head, like
yeah.
vanished. I have no idea where it was, what I did with it. So I definitely get a little bit of that from my father for sure.
I have a similar thing. Maybe it's a creative thing where you're like so focused on something that, yeah, I totally blank on what I was doing before,
Hmm.
like 5 seconds ago. Um, and on your mom's side, like you feel like, to me, someone that's nurturing. Not that all mothers are naturally nurturing or anything, but I feel like having a female figure that's motherly, right? Like, you
Hmm.
yourself seem warm. I was wondering if your mom was similar, or if you get it from her at all.
Um, I think that there probably is like a natural empathy that I pick up from her,
You
and
know
it is
what?
fun. Hmm?
Here's a question. She was a minister, you said, right?
Yeah. Hmm.
And I've grown up in the Korean church, where there tends to be, the pastor's kid tends to be either really, really goody two shoes, like a politician's kid, where they're buttoned up and, oh, he's the pastor's kid, very good, what an
Hmm.
angel, or the devil, like
Right.
complete
Yeah.
opposite.
Or right. Yeah. The daughter from Flashdance. Yeah. Lithgow's kid in Flashdance. Yeah. No. I mean, yeah. I was very much the one of those. I mean, in that, first of all, I grew up, backstage at a Unitarian Universalist church, which is a very liberal church
Mm,
in. I mean, it's obviously nationwide, but it's the the we spent, me and my brothers, my mom would get to church at 7 o'clock, a full 2.5 hours before anybody would get there, and we wouldn't leave until 3 or 4 o'clock. Everybody, all
mm.
the rest of the kids would be all gone, and we had the run of the church. So like the whole mystique of, this is a place that is incredibly holy, was really, um I mean, not completely lost on me, but also Unitarian Universalism was also a very educational, academic based approach to faith, um, and very accepting. But it also, when you run all around, I mean, we played tag up in the, and we could go up to the belfry and back to, we knew everything about that place. So there wasn't a lot of scary mystique of the church. I mean, obviously being from Boston, we knew a ton of Catholics, and it was just really funny because we'd watch, we'd get The Exorcist on VHS, and the Catholics would be terrified, and we were just laughing our asses off. It was practically like a slapstick comedy to us, um, just the sense of, that the sort of satanic panic that passed us by.
And that's because of your mother, like making
I think
sure.
so. I mean, I
Yeah.
think there was a healthy cynicism to
Mm.
almost everything we did. And if you want to talk about also what I got from my dad, he was a teacher, taught teenage boys his whole life. And there was, I mean, I remember when we watched the movie Stand By Me as a kid, he said he loved that movie so much because it accurately portrayed the way like 11 to 13-year-old boys swore.
Oh,
Just sort
uh-huh.
of the swear, like the sort of the power and wielding these words, like not really kind of understanding what they do, but delighting in them,
Mm.
and the creativity and so I mean, there was always a, even though, and I talk about being backstage at the church, I was also backstage at the school, so the emperors really didn't have clothes. I mean, I really knew that all of these authority figures really were human beings.
Wow.
And so I definitely, I mean, when you talk about being like the preacher's kid, I don't know that I was the devil in that I was necessarily rejecting all of it, but I rejected the pageantry. You know what I mean? Like I knew it wasn't. I didn't throw out the baby with the bathwater. I understood that these were places and institutions that I liked and that I valued, but this was not the house of God. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like we
to give some credit to your parents, it does seem like they didn't enforce this sort of authority or saying that I am a teacher, you must respect me in my house. I am a minister, you must respect me in my house. They were able to laugh at themselves in a way that helped you, I think, as an adult.
Yeah, I mean, I think we also came of age in, early to mid 80s. And at the time, the idea at that time, and maybe even still today, but at that time, the idea that a woman would be a minister was pretty radical for New England, and we were raised to really think that that was cool, so like there were a lot of different things that we learned, especially being a family of all boys. I had an older brother and a younger brother. The fact that my mom was entering this sort of gender flip profession, it kind of gave us like a little bit of swagger, if that makes any sense, and so there were a lot of different things that we all prided ourselves. And obviously, my dad was off at meetings and coaching, and my mom was off at meetings, and I mean, for most of my childhood she was actually in divinity school, which I've always thought is a hilarious term. You just learn, like, how much homework does it take to be divine? But anyway, like, but she was in divinity school and was in doing these things, and then signed parishes. She was at the First Parish Church in Jamaica Plain in Cambridge. Well, Jamaica Plain is actually the town, but close to Cambridge, Mass. And so like we learned to cook because they weren't around and doing it, and it almost felt like it wasn't. It was cool that it was. I mean, it's a very difficult line to look, but it was. We lived in a society where that was air quote women's work, but the
Mhm.
fact that we were doing it and could do it, we recognized early that that was a cool skill, you know. And I have a very vivid memory of being. We had a biology class, and there was supposed to be we had to dissect frogs or fetal pigs or whatever it was going to be, and the teacher bailed, or the delivery didn't come in, so we didn't have any fetal pigs or frogs to dissect. And so the science teacher just went down to Stop and Shop and came back with chicken thighs, and like we were going to dissect the chicken thigh and take the chicken off of it. And I remember being appalled as a kid at how many kids were like, "Oh my god, I'm not touching it, that's so disgusting." And like I was looking around going like, "What, you didn't we made these
Right.
last night?" Like, you know what I mean?
I thought you were gonna
So
say you were appalled because all the wasted chicken thighs that weren't gonna be made into food.
I know, it was a little weird watching all of the meat be like, it was like everything that they were interested in, everything that we didn't eat. It was very interesting to see
And
that go down.
I forget in the 80s, but I mean nowadays teachers tend to be women also in terms of the gender flipping. So even your dad being this kind of mentor to a lot of young men
Mhm.
must have does that
It
help
was
you or hurt you in terms of like I know you a lot of young men and young men, Rich, you're no
well,
different.
I think that there was, as I talk about my mom being, sort of a, gender pioneer, or a pioneer in an industry that was not typically, it was more traditionally male dominated. I think my father was supportive of that, but he also was a man, a baby boomer. I mean, he was, I think he acknowledged that what she was doing was cool and needed to be supported, but I think it was hard for him.
Mm.
So in addition to like the fact that we were raised that this was cool, like both my sets of grandparents on my mother's side and my father's side were pretty strict patriarchy situations. The grandfather sat at the front of the table and he was the one who carved the food, and
Right.
these
Yeah.
were pretty, and there was a lot of value to that. You know what I mean? Like that I saw there was a lot of both of my grandparents were terrific, but grandfathers were terrific guys, and my grandmothers were as well. And I think um, there was a sense that what my mom was doing was kind of punk rock and kind of cool. But it was, I think it was, I think my father recognized that or I don't know that we recognized at the time how difficult it was for, like, you know what I mean? It was very easy for me to, like, I had all the advantages, particularly when, like, dating in Massachusetts, as a teenager, saying, "Oh, my mom's a minister." That was a cool punk rock thing to say.
Wow.
And I think, my dad would hear things like, people would genuinely say, like, "Oh, she's a minister. Does she have sex?" Which is, like, insane. But, like, I think that probably bothered my father more than he would say. You know what I mean? So, like, I think he carried that. I think
Yeah, yeah.
for our family, but while he carried that, I think he also did a really good job of instilling the importance of a traditional masculinity, or that having that a masculine ideal. I mean, we also were a huge sports family. All of us played sports. We played sports, together for fun, and organized sports. And there was a very, like, I'm trying to think of a way to say this doesn't sound totally insane, but like a respect for violence, man on
Oh,
man violence,
yeah,
like,
yeah. Sort of like a
either,
toughness
sticking,
or
yeah, a
yeah.
toughness or sticking up for yourself, or, we all were hockey fans, and there was a time when you fight, I mean, and that coexisted and was not at odds with, a non-traditional, females getting into non-traditional roles,
Yeah, male
so,
aggression being a real thing, like, that needs to get
well,
out
and a
sometimes.
valuable thing when channeled the right way. I mean, we would all watch sports, and you never want to watch anybody get injured, but you sure do want to see them get hurt.
Yeah, I mean,
You know
yeah,
what I mean?
UFC,
Like,
everything, wrestling,
I
all of it.
I I mean, there's there and there is, and we would me and my brothers would fight each other with our fists all the time, and there was a very clear line of your older brother or younger brother would make a sound that indicated real pain, and that was like, okay, you got to let up. I mean, there was, but the ability to, to take a punch, to take a beating, to stand up for yourself in a physical way was absolutely a huge part of my upbringing as well. So,
But yeah, but I guess what's good is that it wasn't the be all end all. It's like not what makes you a man, but here's a part of being a guy or
mhm.
growing up at that era. Whereas maybe now it's warped into like that's all you need to know, and that creates its own
Yeah, no, I mean, a really
twist.
good
Yeah,
example was my dad used to always, uh, arm wrestle us, and he wanted to have beat. It would be the point where you could beat your dad at arm wrestling. And I
yeah.
remember, because we would all be, and so we arm wrestle my dad, and he would always win, and then we would arm wrestle each other. And I remember, as a young kid that was sort of, funny. I remember arm wrestling my older brother, and I didn't stand a chance of beating him. And we were arm wrestling, and I reached over and kissed him right on the lips, and he freaked out. And I beat him at arm wrestling, and my dad thought it was the funniest thing in the world. So it was like this sense of there is a masculinity, like, um, being afraid of, homosexuality or any of that, like that almost the sense that being afraid of it was worse than that. You know what I mean? Like, using your brains and your wits in that situation was valued more than just using your brawn, for sure. So that was something that was passed on to me by my parents as well.
If you feel comfortable, are you in your 40s? Is that right?
I'm 51.
You are?
Hmm.
Whoa! All right, you look great.
Well, video
Well,
podcast.
I guess I was just getting at like I don't. When did you meet your wife?
I got married when I was 37. So I met her
37.
when I was about 35,
Yeah.
I'd
So
say.
through your 20s and 30s, did you feel well equipped? Like, did you feel a sense of self? Did you feel well equipped as an adult human being? Jobs aside, or sort of the societal things, but through your endeavors, feel content. I guess.
I don't know. I mean, I think that,
I mean, even now too. Like, you could still totally be uh, reflecting on it. It's not to say you're totally, quote unquote, repaired or anything. But I'm just getting at like I have a daughter, right, and I'm just trying to do right by her by raising her right.
mhm.
And I'm curious with your parents and how they raised you, if there is anything that you feel you lacked in some way, whether they meant to do it or not. It's just more like, man, I wish my parents gave me a little more of this.
I don't, hmm. I don't think that they made. I mean, I think that there were situational things in my parents' marriage and in in just the times that we were going through. Um, we had some struggles with money as well. That were, I mean, I think probably the way that I deal with money is probably still a little impacted by that. I mean, I was always dealing with hearing a message on the one hand that was save money, food is cheap, food isn't cheap, eat everything on your plate, if you want to go out and do something, you need to go get a job. There was all this, but there also was a sense that I was secure and safe. And so I don't it felt to me like a lot of the concern about money was anxiety based, or I don't know that we were we certainly weren't rich, but we had two salaries my whole life, and
Yeah.
and I think that I think my dad had, when he was younger, had a lot less money and struggled a lot more, and he passed a lot of this sort of, I mean, there are basic financial things that, like, I mean, when I met my wife, I was in debt in a million ways because I just thought everything would kind of work out eventually.
Uh-huh.
Like, it didn't occur to me, like, that, like, being in credit card debt could be a serious, really bad thing, and getting, and I was in debt for quite a while, and it just didn't, like, there were just things that I was not taught about the way money works. Like, I sort of thought that when you borrowed money, once you paid the money back, you were going to be good. Like, the concept of, like, no, you're just going to pay interest forever, and I mean, I remember being, in my 20s or something like that, and having a college loan situation where I talked to the person on the phone, and they were like, yeah, how much of this payment can you make? And I said, well, they're like, can you make, whatever it is, $61 this month? And, I was a struggling comic and doing, you know, temp jobs and road gigs and, this and that, wherever I could get it. And I remember being on the phone with this person, and they were like, well, could you make a $61 payment? And I said to them, I was like, well, if I pay you $61 every month, when am I going to have this debt relieved? And the guy's like, oh, well, never. And I was like,
Because it's not
why
enough.
in God's name would I do that then? You know what I mean? Like, why, and I remember just hanging, and he was like, well, we're in a serious place. And I was like, I know, this is pretty serious, isn't it? You know what I mean? Like, and I guess on the one hand, I had the privilege of knowing that I could always go home. I didn't want to go home, but,
Uh-huh.
like, I didn't want to quit, but I never really. I think if there was one thing that I wish I knew a little bit better from my parents, was just like this, just some real on the ground financial advice. I don't think I ever really got it. I think I was given a very bootstraps sort of, go out and get your money, but if you're honest and straightforward, everything will work out. Like, the idea of, like, predatory lenders just was not, it didn't even occur to me how bad that could be.
Right. That's so funny that they tell you to be fiscally responsible, but when the shit goes down, or when it all goes down, it's just not well equipped. It sucks. It really does.
I mean, well, I don't know. I was going to complain about a credit card company situation that I had, but that's a
um,
thing that everybody has. It's like healthcare.
so going towards that, and now that, whether you know that about yourself or you're just reflecting on it now, like, have you taken the steps to take control of it, or
Well, I mean,
giving
I'm
your
doing,
daughter some tricks of the trade?
I mean, she's better at it than I am now. I mean, she's already got a summer job. She's going to be working in a, in a summer camp as a counselor. I mean, the economically, the ground has been shifting so much for me. It's
Yeah.
just been so crazy. I mean, like, whatever, like 4 or 5 years ago, my main industry, the main thing that I was able to carve out for myself, was I created a niche for myself as an expert in social media for fictional characters, because I had done a very, very successful Twitter campaign. I worked for True TV, division of Warner Media, and was an early adopter of Twitter at that point, when people were not. The old cliche at that time was the intern was doing it, and I was the digital media writer who got hired because I was a blogger, and nobody really knew what Twitter was. And all of a sudden, I was out there on the company Twitter, being funny and being responsive and listening to people, and there was a sense that doesn't exist now, that like, wait, this huge company just is kind of, being a little wise ass, like, but honestly representing, and speaking to me in a way that companies didn't. I achieved some success with that. There was so I did that, and I through the course of my career, I was fortunate enough to get asked to do some freelance work where I was the voice of a number of iconic Sesame Street Muppets. Like I did tweets for Cookie Monster and Big Bird and Ernie and Bert was my favorite.
Yeah,
And
if
I
you
got to,
think about it, that's like script writing. That's like anything where you're
mhm.
filling words for the characters that they would say out loud. It's not performed, but if someone at home is reading the book, reading a magazine where they're quoting interviews with Cookie,
Yeah.
it's exactly what it
Yeah.
is.
My point is, yes, I'm a comedian, writer, social media professional, but like I'm telling you, these days it has never been more hard to be in social media. It used to be I gravitated to it because I could write short, funny things very quickly, and the atmosphere of social media has really, really gotten to a place of algorithmic gamesmanship that is it feels much much more difficult to communicate to another human being one to one on social media than it used to be.
Which circles back to your family's purest intent of orating and communicating in a very educated manner, and why this offends you so. It's like, you guys are not getting the context. This is a platform just to get clicks rather than like actually conversations going,
Right,
which
right,
hurts your psyche, I bet.
a little bit.
So I was wondering about your own daughter and you and your wife when you decided to have a
Mm.
kid. What were some of the things that you, whether you verbalized it or not, like, man, I hope my daughter's like this? What part of you did you want to pass on to your kid?
Um,
I want you to
one
pat
of
yourself a
the
little back on the back. Like, I
if I
love this
can
about myself.
if I can pat myself on the back a little bit about being a father, one of the things I love the most about the way my daughter turned out is her independent streak. I mean, I have a video that we did that's on YouTube that I love. It's a 7-minute YouTube video, which seems like the longest thing in the on the planet Earth, but it is a thing where I came home from Costco and I was opening up cat food cans, and cat food cans, they stack very nicely, like they nest really nicely into each other. And it was me and my daughter Annabelle, she's probably 3, and she just started kind of stacking up the cat food cans, and the stack gets higher and higher and higher and higher until it's above her head, and it starts getting a little dangerous because she's little and there's this, it's a stack of steel.
Yeah.
These aren't like,
This is a
Legos,
tuna.
yeah, right, it's cans of tuna, right? And it's getting up pretty high. And at one point she was like, it's too high, and she's like, Daddy, you do it. And on the video I say, like, are you sure? Why don't you try? Maybe you can do it. Do you want to go get your step? And she has a little step that she used to brush her teeth and stuff. And so she ran and got it and kept stacking them up. And it became this really kind of compelling, terrifying thing of, when is this child's giant stack of cans going to fall? And eventually it did. And I made sure that they didn't fall on her head. Um, but just the sense of saying, you can do this, like, the and another reason that I, kind of went back and dove back into stand up when I did last year was I really felt like it was challenging and difficult for me to have my daughter not need me anymore, you know? And but that's the job. Like, you know
Yeah.
what I mean? Like, if your
Yeah.
daughter's 14 or 15 and she's like, I need you, daddy, like, you messed up, man.
Mm.
Like, so I think we have done a pretty remarkable job of instilling her with the confidence that she can go out and do things on her. She can, she can do these things, and that it's okay to try. And if it doesn't go right, this is the way it works, and part of that is being a New York kid.
I have a question. Like, I've heard, daughters tend to be daddy's girls in terms of like that connection, but also that's not always the case. Like, having this great relationship, like seeing pictures, I think that's your daughter in your Instagram. Like,
Mhm.
she looks like she enjoys being around you and being in your company and being
I put the good ones out there, but
yeah,
yeah.
like, enjoy it enough where she feels okay that it's posting a picture with me and my dad.
I will say that right after she turned about 12, 13, or whatever, she gets veto power on any picture that gets put on social media for sure.
Oh,
I
yeah.
mean, and we are still in a little bit of a gray area. I feel like I've been way more permissive of social media because I worked in social media. So I sort of feel like, well, I want to, I mean, like, I noticed on your personal social media, you had like a heart over your daughter's face, which is a thing that happened like back when I was, a kid. Like, no, none of us did that. It didn't like it.
We weren't worried yet.
We
The
were not worried yet, and
Yeah.
also there was a sense on social media that like really only our friends were seeing it anyway. I mean, I remember being we were on the fence about Facebook at all, but we had Facebook and I had Facebook. My wife did not have Facebook. And she said, I want to see pictures of my friend Spanky's kid. Can you join? Can you add Spanky as a friend so I can see pictures of his kid? And I was like, you do it. Like, yeah, it's not my friend. And I remember we kind of argued about that, but like Facebook, we could sort of take it or leave it. And then when we had a kid, we were so tired that we have a thing you can go back on my wife's Facebook now. I probably haven't done our privacy settings at all. We probably should, but like you can go back and say Bells month 1, Bells month 2, Bells month 3, and we would just do a photo dump because we were so tired and everybody wanted to see baby pictures all the time. That
It
we
was
would just
innocent
say
times.
it's on Facebook. Like at the end of the month, here we'll go through our photos and this is where they are and here are the cute pictures and you can see her and I think yeah, people now are I mean, and like as we were, now that Annabelle's, 14, 15 years old, like she's definitely gone through my old Instagram and been like, yeah, can you take this one down?
It was my roundabout way of asking, "How'd you get her to like you?"
Ha! I mean, you just gotta love them and feed them and hope for the best. I
For the
mean, I
best.
remember when I had a very, very young daughter, I've been lucky because I was sort of a little bit younger than most of my friends in my peer group. So I had the benefit of a number of friends of mine who were like comedian friends and bar friends and not like squares, like guys who were going out and doing comedy or doing the things that I was doing, who I got to see become parents in real time. And they were there with 7, 8 year olds when I had a baby, and I remember one of them, my friend was just like, here's the thing. They're very hard to kill. I mean, you need to love them and be there for them, but they're gonna, you can't be hovering over them all the time.
Yeah.
And you need to let them be the people that they're going to be. And I think one other thing that I really, talk about getting her to like me, what I really enjoyed doing was sharing some of the things that I liked as a kid or even
Mm.
like now with her. And I mean, I was very lucky in the sense that when she was really young, that was when all of the Star Wars not the prequels, but the Rey Skywalker ones.
Oh, yeah.
There was a new Star Wars like
The
the Force
reboots.
Awakens and yeah,
Yeah.
the reboots. And they ended up not being good as they went along, but the first one was real good. And she was just the right age that like I was able to share Star Wars with her. And we did that also with Marvel movies, which was a really wonderful thing because I grew up reading the
Mm,
comic books. So it was really fun to be able to share Marvel movies with her. And so we have a nice connection with movies. And as it's funny, as she's gotten older, there are some things that she's into that I'm not into, but we have a good sense. Like, I like sharing things that I love with her. And it's,
do
I
you
mean,
ever
and
do you
yeah.
ever feel the need to watch or read whatever she's into so that you can be on the same page, or just hear her out and hear her excitement about it?
I took a deep dive on Taylor Swift when that was going. And I do think I've said this to all parents. You should all be incredibly grateful. You could not ask for anything better than a pop star like Taylor Swift. That is, like in terms of the quality of the music and the, relative role model status. It's not some, dead-eyed little Justin Bieber weasel. You know what I mean? Like I was, I was afraid of a million, sort of in sync nightmares, of boy bands that I was, but Taylor Swift was a blessing. So like I always tried to, with my daughter, to at least keep an open mind, and like and so I have an opinion with her stuff now, you know what I mean? And it's like, look, I like Taylor Swift. You can keep Frank Ocean. And she's like, all right, like, there's certain things, and I just try to listen. I just try to listen to the things that she thinks are important.
You mentioned how you raised your daughter to be independent and you're really proud of that. I was wondering, how have you done it so that she comes to you when she's in trouble? Like, when do you step in versus letting her say, I want help?
That is a fantastic question. And I think that I have been lucky in that I do not think I've encountered something that has been like an existential horrible thing that she's
Yeah.
needed help with. I've really done my best to say, um, you can call me, you can text me, you can do these things, but you don't really ever know until that moment comes. One thing that we have done that has been, I think, remarkable is we do have, just living in Washington Heights, we have, she grew up with a lot of our adult friends around. And we have, she's got a couple of people who she refers to as uncles and aunts who are not blood uncles and aunts, but we're in the city and these are our crew. And they've been over, for Thanksgiving and they've helped raise her. And we have, a text thread called The Best People in the World that has her and these people. And if you can't text me, text Danny, text Sandy. I think that making sure that she has resources that are available to her, and maybe being a big enough person to know that it's not always going to be me. I mean, I hope that she would feel comfortable reaching out to me if she was in trouble. I hope so. I think I've built that, but I mean, a certain part of that is faith too. I mean, you can't force that on somebody. And I do know that we have established enough, well, maybe not enough, hopefully enough. I mean, additional lifelines and support systems for her that are out there and told her that they are there. And if she gets the help she needs from me, fantastic. As if she gets from somebody else, fantastic.
Last question, Rich. If you had to give one piece of parental advice to me, what would it be, sir?
I mean, I might have even have said this to you. This is the parental advice I give everybody, and this is not profound parental advice. This is on the ground, down and dirty, just parental advice. This is when you are videoing your child, right? You take your cell phone and you're like, oh, I'm taking a picture of my kid, and you want to take a photo of your child, and you hit the photo, and you go, oh no, wait, I this is a video. I screwed up. This is not a picture. This is a video. Let the video run. Let it go for just a minute, like, because there's nothing more upsetting than, when you go back 10, 15 years later and you see this adorable little 2-year-old or 3-year-old or baby or whatever it is, and you go, oh, it's a video. And then it vanishes, right? And you go, oh, that was her, right? Because the thing that you are taking a photo of is not necessarily the thing that you're going to remember fondly. What you're going to remember fondly is her and seeing her in that moment. And if you have your phone and you take a video and it's not, you try to take a photo and you take a video, even if you just keep that video rolling and just say, I'm doing a video now because I did it by mistake. What do you think about that? And let yourself bomb. Let yourself just do it. Point the camera at yourself, point the camera at her, give yourself at least 30 seconds, and it'll be this nice little window into your life at the time that you were not expecting, and those will end up being treasures.
Rich, this has been a beautiful, amazing conversation. And with that, it's apparent that Rich is an amazing person. Thanks, Rich.
Thank you so much, Joon. I really appreciate the time and the opportunity, and I'll see you around.
See you around. If you like what you heard, please subscribe and give us a 5-star review. It's Apparent Podcast is produced and edited by Joon Chung. The show logo was designed by Shabazzle, and the theme song was produced by Ish D.